Out with the Orban, in with the new. This week, we have lessons Americans can take away from the recent Hungarian election. Joining with me today are my good friends, Sam and Danny. What's up, guys?
Hey, how's it going?
On April 12th, 2026, famed zebra enthusiast Viktor Orban lost his seat as prime minister to challenger Peter Magyar. This was a stunning upset, at least I thought, as Orban has ruled Hungary for 16 years, and during that time has attacked democratic institutions, cut down on what speech is allowable in public venues. His political allies have bought up media organizations within Hungary, and there have been police crackdowns on dissent in Hungary. And so it's kind of surprising that, they just had an election and got him out of office the old-fashioned way.
I don't know too much about it, but I was hearing that the guy who won, he wasn't allowed to be interviewed on any major news network in the country. Like the first time he got on a show was after he'd won the election.
Yeah, I mean, usually, I don't want to get too inside baseball with the politics. I know not everyone's like deep politicos like we are. But usually when you have an election, it's pretty valuable to get on TV to tell people you're running.
It's they're the presidential debates and the presidential vice debates and the primaries. You can get some hilarious things like what Howard Dean had no, that was at a rally. He did the infamous scream
Yeah.
or whatever that disqualified him from being president.
I can already kind of tell with the headspace that was looking back at all the televised debates and stuff and all the campaign things, it's I can only really remember the times that people hurt themselves by being on TV, but it feels like you should be on TV and promoting yourself, even though I feel nothing but contempt when a political ad comes on.
Yeah, well, there's other things besides just ads.
Well, I mean, you can get propaganda of presidential debate this year. I learned that Haitians eat cats and dogs, apparently. And they would just go out in the street and grab them. That's what the president of the United States said they were doing.
And then when asked why they would say something like that, I think what did JD Vance say? Something along the lines of not everything we say is going to be true. Something along those lines. It's good times. But yeah, I think you're in the right headspace for this conversation, because I thought this was kind of cool that Hungary was able to oust their would-be dictator through an election. That's of the ways you can get rid of a bad leader, that's easily one of the most bloodless, which is a positive if you are a blood-having individual living in Hungary.
When you can avoid a civil war and just have a vote, that's always a perk.
A plus,
Truly the
number
only
one
perk out of democracy.
Yeah. So in that spirit, many members of our audience are American and most likely aware that we'll have pretty significant elections coming up this fall.
Fingers crossed.
The midterm elections, where we pick a lot of our Congress members, senators, and
the entire House and
representatives.
1/3 of the Senate, right?
Yeah, something like that. We've got some time to take things like this Hungarian election into stock and see what lessons we can learn from it, because this is the kind of result we would like, where we get rid of the bad politicians. The winner of the election, Peter Magyar.
Kind of a funny name, actually.
Yeah, for those not familiar with Hungary, it's kind of like saying his name is Peter Hungarian person. It's a little redundant, but also a great name for a politician.
Yeah, it's like if we elected a guy named Johnny Caucasian as president.
Exactly. Takeaway number one: if you want to replicate this kind of success, you got to vote. Obviously, this election, this is baseline, but it doesn't hurt to say. Shout out David, miss you, buddy, for my pro voting episode. This was the highest voter turnout of any Hungarian election since the transition to democracy in 1990. They had 79.56% of the Hungarian electorate come out. Just for context, the last presidential election in the United States saw pretty high voter turnout for an American election. It was 64.1%. And
we ever had an election where we had 80% turnout?
COVID was the highest voter turnout. I think I remember, because I was reading some crazy statistic that like
Yeah. The 2020 election, like our most recent election was down from the 2020 election.
but like for the U.S. for like the last 8 presidential elections, the most popular person has been no vote. No presidents beaten. Biden was the only one I think that beat no vote, and that's just because finally enough people voted in the U.S. election, and
Yeah.
just every vote
Okay.
matters.
So the turnout in the 1860 presidential election was 81.8%. So
Oh, there you go.
we have had some.
1868?
1860. So right before the Civil War.
Okay, so
That makes
people are a
sense.
little engaged. It's probably a good time to be engaged in politics. If you think a civil war is a brewing, if Kansas is bleeding by this point, this next election, I'm going to be, over the course of this thing, I'm going to be selling the importance of the upcoming midterm election. But for further context, the last congressional election we had in 2022 had 52.2% turnout, which is pretty poor. Also,
That's
like a great opportunity. Like if 47.8% of the population wrote in Batman, Batman would have swept Congress with like hundreds of seats.
We would have had the Gotham party. Nightwing, Robin, Huntress. That's about all the Batman heroes I know.
At least he has enough money that he can buy a house in every district for the residency requirement.
Knowing the American populace, they'd probably just vote in the Joker because they're twisted. Takeaway number 2, get the absolute best candidate you can, because when it comes down to it, you're just going to need to hold your nose and stick to whoever you got. Peter Magyar, not, like my dream candidate. He was a member of Viktor Orban's party Fidesz, and I apologize to all our Hungarian listeners. I'm going to be brutally mispronouncing things this entire episode. Just, give me a Magyar Utcag in the comments if you like how I fucked it up. He did campaign on some pretty important things, like not being Viktor Orban. That was pretty important. I think that's why people really rallied around him. This is Tizza's, Disza's platform. They're kind of center-right, I guess you would say. They're still very like anti-immigration. They're not particularly pro-Ukraine in the question of Russia versus Ukraine, which is pretty relevant for them considering their proximity to Ukraine. They don't appear to be as hardline on issues of gender equality and like trans and LGBTQ rights. They're not like particularly pro those things. But they have some interesting stuff in their platform too. Like one of the things that Peter campaigned on was a 1% billionaire tax, something that we're trying to get in California this fall.
He's further left on this issue than Gavin Newsom.
Yeah, exactly. Like he's not, he's not like a great savior of liberal social democracy or whatever, but he is farther left than Gavin Newsom on this particular issue, which is nice.
I have a question. So, like, my understanding of Hungary is like the wealthy owned and ran like the government. Like, you had your guy in charge, but he did it with the consent of like the billionaire. Like, Gavin Newsom, billionaires kind of pay his salary. He's looking for a presidential campaign. Like, he has to be very billionaire friendly. The guy that
The
won
thing is,
Hungary's
he
election,
doesn't. Like, and the same is true of, Peter Magyar. It's like, yes, there's high incentive to hew closely to whatever the billionaires in your society want because they have, the money and the power, right? But when it comes to votes, as much as corrupt as our system is, like technically money still doesn't vote. Voting is still a way that you can exercise power over the wealthy.
Yeah. I think my point was like, Peter, if you're already the enemy of the billionaires, like it's easy to do like a 1% wealth tax because you don't care about the repercussions of that. For Gavin Newsom, he could do the wealth tax, but for him personally, it might have worse consequences, even if it's like the right thing to do for California. For Peter, the right thing to him is he's won. He can kind of sock it to his enemies and say, all right, we get 1% of your stuff and use it as a tax thing. So that's when you say like, this guy's to the left of Gavin. It's like, okay, well, I think there might be some political strategy there, given why he's to the left, but on other stuff, he's to the right.
I mean, right. Like there's personal reasons and like coalition reasons, I'm sure. But like from the point of view of the of the population, those things don't matter. Like,
That's
there are
true. Yeah.
explanations of why these individuals take these actions, but from someone who would not get a doctor's visit were it not for the government subsidized healthcare,
Yeah. If you
it
don't get to
doesn't
see
really
the
matter
doctor,
what Gavin Newsom's personal feelings on the matter are.
I feel like you were trying to defend Gavin Newsom, but I kind of felt like you were damning him more than defending him.
yeah, that's fair. When I look at Gavin, I just think he's already kind of in the pocket of people, and so it's like, all right, I know he's left on some things, but anyways, I digress.
I mean,
Yeah.
couldn't agree more. Okay, so right, there is a lot of organizing that like kind of went into this victory. So that's tip number 3 is organize. It's your right, even when it isn't your legal right, it is your human right. You alluded to this earlier, but Peter Magyar wasn't allowed on like mainstream news sources, basically. But he was still able to get his message out. And one of the ways that he did that was there was like a organizing effort to get people like aware of and interested in alternative news sources. So subscriber supported digital platforms, Patreon kind of fueled news sources, and YouTube, actually, not to, whatever. I
We're
don't know, it
part of
feels
the
weird
solution,
to
guys.
promote YouTube on YouTube, but, here we are. It is pretty cool that there is this tool available for you to get your message out.
The internet is not just for cat pictures, I guess. Look, it does real, actual good stuff sometimes.
Sometimes I think it's a mixed record, but we'll take these wins where we can find them.
I mean, this is what like people would always talk about in the internet for the early days, dude. This is the end of totalitarianism. People will be able to organize around the state systems and
Right,
popular power.
It's mostly just a misinformation engine that thrives on anger. And you should feel pretty angry about that and go stick it to someone, I don't know. That also, like, be aware of, when you're organizing, be aware of, like, the systems that would allow you to exercise some power other than voting. There was a pretty big organizing effort to get people to, like, be aware of this Hungarian law where citizens are allowed to put 1% of their income tax into a nonprofit. Basically, they just got like a bunch of people to fill out a form saying your income tax nonprofit donation goes to either like Partizan or Telex, these independent news outlets, and these were the ones that were getting the message out about Tisza and Peter Magyar's campaign. When you're like organizing campaigns, it's easy to get kind of caught in this bubble. You're just only talking with like-minded people, and Hungarian organizers were aware of this weakness, so they started doing this thing called countryside tours, because the opposition, is locked mostly in Budapest, like the big city in Hungary. And what they would do is they would take a couple of people, get in some cars, and go out to the countryside, and then they just like hold town halls and just talk about the issues and like what was making people upset. And that was a way they like got in-person FaceTime with the community, like communities that were not locked into their political way of thinking.
That's kind of smart. I think a lot of people, it's like, you do your routine, you turn on the TV, you watch 30 minutes of morning news, and it's like, are you watching MSNBC? Are you watching Fox? That's your news for the day, then, that's
And you
it.
should switch to Info Hazard.
Yeah, if you only listen to 20 minutes of Info Hazard a day, are you in a bubble or not?
Yeah, I mean, for like how for how much time I spend on this podcast, I'm pretty ambivalent about the ability of one to spread their message on the internet. I think we're pretty much talking to the people in Budapest right now. We're not really talking to metaphorically speaking. That's algorithms for you. But I'm a big believer in like putting in FaceTime with people, because like it's so easy to dismiss a comment on the internet or a video or something. But when you're like face to face with a real person who has views different than yourself, it's hard to like dismiss that person out of hand. Like there's that human connection that's hard to replicate over the internet.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like this. I also, it reminded me of a very famous failure in the Russian Revolution where they did the same thing, but they were like real dicks about it, and they just really condescending to like the peasants and stuff they would talk to, and it like backfired on them. Yeah. So don't do that. Be nice instead.
I feel like U.S. politicians are mostly too cowardly to do this now, right?
Well, they've been canceling town halls. They've been doing the opposite. They're
But
just
like, fuck the politicians. Like, this is about organizing. This is like, you're not a politician. You're just some person, and go out there and talk to some other people.
if you have a candidate in your area that you kind of believe in, a lot of times for elections, they're always looking for door knockers. They're not necessarily like repping the politician. They're there to get people to register to vote. And it's just like, if you know that if you can like say this is the politician, this is why I'm voting for, it's like, yeah, you're kind of piercing the bubble. And even if it's only like, 4 hours on one of your weekends, it still makes a difference. Everyone you talk to, it's going to make an impact on them. That, I know a lot of political parties and a lot of politicians are always looking for people that support them and want to go out and rep them. But yeah, that kind of goes against your fuck your politician stance.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I was just saying that to emphasize the importance of like community involvement. Because like without the community involvement, there's no point in advocating for a particular politician. Then you truly are just picking between a douche and a turd sandwich. Like, you need politicians to need you. You need to be the source of the power that they can draw from. And to really just cap off this particular takeaway, the strength of the organizing effort here was they were effectively able to create dual power. They create a parallel society with its own funding and internal narratives, and they were able to spread it and build it up big enough that the government couldn't ignore it, and get it like pervasive and big enough that like if they were to crack down on it with violence, that there would be consequences for the regime. Like if there's like a few lone wolves doing political violence or something, and the government throws them in jail, that's like, no one cares, right? But if enough people are resisting the regime and the government cracks down on them, then that's going to hurt the government's ability to talk with other governments, and they're going to lose their financial partners. In the case of Hungary, with the EU, which are important for survival of the regime.
I remember kind of like an analysis a little bit into like, because I don't think Orban was quite at like Gaddafi's level of dictatorship, but usually a lot of dictators, they're not really, like they're the guy in charge nominally, but they're in a lot of ways first among equals. Like they could squash one of the other power guys, but if everybody starts hurting, they're just another guy at that point. Like very few dictators have complete and total control. Usually they're just the guy that ended up in power.
So, right. I mean, he was prime minister, right? So, like, he
did get voted out.
Inherently, and he did get voted out, but like, it's hard to be like a true autocrat in a parliamentary system where your party can always kind of vote of no confidence you out at any point. But yeah, I mean, like, he did create a cult of personality around himself, and he had all these international ties.
I mean, not that many, right? It was just Russia and Russia.
The U.S.
people, right?
The U.S. Like Hungary was
J.D. Vance dumped for him.
Oh yeah, that's true. I forgot about that.
J.D. Vance continuing his
picking winners.
Well, yeah, he's been the touch of death for how many things he's been advocating for at this point. I said it before and I'll say it again. He does not have the juice. I am not that worried about J.D. Vance. Fourth takeaway here, embrace defectors. This one's hard, but like, if you are hoping to build the largest possible coalition, when people get sick of the other guy and come looking for a side, they're not going to come to your side. If you're like, I can't believe it took you this long to change sides. Why didn't you see it? And like the fact that he said, fucking praise Allah on Easter, that was the tipping point for you. Like, you can't, that's not good community building.
But it is the most delicious of moral treats.
It is a hollow, empty treat.
I think it's
empty calories.
In some ways with the bubble society, it's easier to forgive like that, because it's like maybe they honestly had no idea, and it was just like they never really heard about it, or it was like, it was just they didn't think it was an actual quote, it was an exaggeration. If you're in a bubble with a guy that loves a politician, you're not really going to hear too much bad stuff about him.
It's true.
It's kind of like things don't adding up. Like, prices get higher in the grocery store. You're threatened to get kicked out of the EU, and you might have to get a passport to go like visit your cousin somewhere else. And you're like, hey, all this stuff I'm hearing on the news isn't adding up to like what I'm seeing with my own two eyes. Like that's someone that like, all right, they want to go with another party. If you tell them to like, hey, well, you voted, you made your bed. Yeah, I don't know. That just feels kind of like they're either not gonna vote or they're not gonna join you. I think it's self-defeating to not extend the hand out to other people, or to close the doors to your party.
And yet so many people love to do it, dude. I mean, go on Reddit, for example, you'll see like so many people just like flame anyone who's changing their mind, just like Phil was talking about.
What's it? The leopards ate my face party
Again,
or whatever. Yeah, I
just
mean, I read that subreddit.
I do too. I am a black pot calling the kettle black is what I am. Do as I say, not as I do. Fifth takeaway, don't comply. I guess I should be more specific, but like, there will be breaches of your freedoms, right? And in America, this has happened a lot. Like Trump will sign some executive order for something that's clearly illegal on the face of it, unconstitutional. Don't comply with unlawful orders. Now, I'm going to give a Hungarian example, but I think the true test of these unlawful orders is yet to come here in America. So, Hungarian example. In March of 2025, Viktor Orban's government banned pro-LGBTQ marches and gatherings. The law, as it was written, allowed police to use facial recognition software to identify violators. So there's like a massive web of surveillance that it was picking people out of crowds at pride marches and stuff like that. And if you were caught going to one of these gatherings, you could face up to a year of prison, which sounds bad. But they went anyways, which is good. In fact, Budapest Pride that year, very shortly after this law was signed, 100,000 to 200,000 people showed up for the Pride event, which was
It's pretty big.
It was huge. It was the biggest ever in Budapest, and it wasn't particularly close. The last Pride event was 35,000 people. So they jumped up like an order of magnitude.
Even the U.S. would struggle to put 200,000 people in jail, dude.
Yeah.
And we're the best at jail.
San Francisco, it's 3 to 5 million. But the event draws 3 to 5 million, but there's only 50,000 marchers. So it's like, I know you said there were like 300,000 marchers or something like that,
200,000 on the top end.
I think they're more interested in the bottom end.
You ought to know better than to make these gay subculture jokes. I can't bear them. But like, Budapest doesn't have like the same history as San Francisco.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Attila the Hun was there, for example, which I don't think he ever visited San Francisco, as far as I'm aware.
If he did, he didn't write it down in his diary. It's a quick jaunt across the Atlantic or whatever. It would have been tough.
Yeah, it would have been tough.
It would have been tough for a Hunnic warlord.
Probably would have needed a reindeer.
They can't arrest everyone, and they didn't. And that's good to remember when, whatever that fateful, unlawful order may be in the future. And then number 6, and my last one for today, is you gotta once you get the bastards out, you gotta prosecute. That was like probably the main reason that Peter Magyar was elected, was his relentless campaign of like getting Orban to like prosecuting him once he was out of office. Like once he no longer had like the immunity of the office, that he was
ENC take note.
Yeah. That I couldn't help but see parallels to 2020 and Biden when I was looking at Peter Magyar's campaign, and this hopefully will be the real big point of divergence, like between those two center-right candidates.
I didn't really see much of Peter's campaign. Did he leave his basement?
He did. Yeah, no, he showed up to events and stuff, but they had to be pretty like sneaky.
That's fair.
But yeah, Orban was like a real piece of shit, and like he was like a really corrupt politician, and like that's what the campaign focused on, was like the harm that he was doing to Hungarian citizens, and that really resonated with people. I mean, it feels so redundant to just point out the crimes of the current administration in America, but honestly, people need to be connecting like the obvious crimes that are happening to the harm that they're feeling. And then once we get someone else in office, there needs to be justice.
So by justice, you mean giving them a blanket pardon for anything they did wrong, right? Gerald Ford style?
Yeah, I think I don't know how we're gonna get around it. That both like this is some sort of justice. I don't know, man. Maybe like can you impeach the vice president? Is that possible?
Yeah, I think so.
Can you do both? Can it be like a double?
Yeah, I think so.
So my question is, how much should Peter win by, right? Because
A lot.
like we
He
would
won
need to
pretty significant.
like we would have the Democrats would have to crush like the Republican Party in 2026, like the midterm, and then they need to probably beat them even harder in 2028 because you like to really hold anybody in the federal government accountable. Like you kind of got to get the Senate and the Democrats. I don't think they like unless things go terrible.
Actually,
do they even have a
they're
path to 60?
projected to do pretty well in the senatorial race. Like they were, they're always kind of underdogs in the Senate. But if you check like betting markets, their chances have like recently passed up the Republicans, and this is pretty far ahead of the election. Like there's a lot of
But that's
negative
like
sentiment.
that's
for
like the
Republicans
majority.
right now.
Like you need a super majority because if you want to like impeach, you got to have more than a majority, right?
Yeah, 2/3.
You got to have 2/3, and I don't.
But Peter crushed it, dude. They have enough of a majority to change their constitution, so they
Yep.
they did well.
Not everything here is directly applicable, obviously. But like, I think that this is something that really was inspirational to the people of Hungary. And I think if we could pull it off here in the US, that would be equally, if not more, inspirational.
Definitely more, dude. It affects me
People
personally.
face justice for obvious crimes. And if you want to do some obvious crimes, let us know in the comments. Or don't. Actually, keep that to yourself.
Well, you said obvious. Telling
okay.
people about it makes it obvious.
Yeah. Fair enough. And you could be fair enough on another prime ministerial election winning episode of Info Hazard.
Nailed it.
Nailed it. Got it.
Good